I sent my wife's latest ultrasound to my sister, who's a top radiologist, just to share the good news. Minutes later, she called back, her voice shaking. Get home now. Take her to a different hospital. I asked, what's wrong? Is the baby okay? She replied, don't let your wife know we talked. My heart pounded as she said the words that left me frozen in horror. Okay, buckle up, because I have a story for you. A story about how I thought I had everything, the perfect life, the perfect wife, until one chilling phone call shattered it all, forcing me to confront a betrayal so deep, it still makes my blood run cold. Chapter 1. The Perfect Illusion Man. I really thought I had it all. 34 years old, my cybersecurity firm was crushing it. I had this amazing house in the suburbs, and my beautiful wife, Bethany, was supposedly pregnant with our first child. I was in my home office, phone in hand, just staring at the ultrasound image on my computer screen, absolutely beaming. Bethany called from the kitchen. You should send it to your sister. She'd love to see it. And she was right. My older sister, Lee Benson, is seriously one of the country's leading radiologists. She spent years at Johns Hopkins and now has this prestigious position in Boston. If anyone would appreciate the miracle of that grainy image, it was Lee. So I typed out a quick message. Guess who's going to be an aunt? 8 weeks along. Beth and I are over the moon. I was so proud. I met Bethany 4 years ago at a tech conference. She was a pharma sales rep, charming, vivacious, with auburn hair and green eyes that just sparkled when she laughed. Our courtship was a whirlwind, 6 months of dating, then I proposed on a beach in Maui. My business, Walters Security Solutions, had really taken off after I found a critical vulnerability in a major retailer system. That 6-figure contract was just the beginning. Now, at 34, I had 12 employees and contracts with Fortune 500 companies. Life was good. Perfect, even. Bethany walked in, wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, that soft, glowing look on her face. Did you send it? She asked. I closed my laptop. She's going to flip. She's been bugging us about kids for 2 years. Your sister can be a bit intense, Bethany said, but I noticed her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Over the past year, I'd picked up on this tension between her and Lee. Lee never explicitly said she disliked Bethany, but there was this coolness, a professional distance that was so unlike her. She means well, I told Bethany. She practically raised me after Mom died. Our mother passed from breast cancer when I was 14, and Lee, at 22, actually deferred medical school for a year to help my dad take care of me. That sacrifice forged a bond between us that was stronger than most siblings share. Suddenly, Bethany's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then quickly silenced it. I need to run to the pharmacy. Prenatal vitamins. I can go, I offered. No, I need to pick up a few other things too. Woman stuff. She grabbed her purse and keys. I'll be back in an hour. I watched her leave, noting how quickly she moved when her phone buzzed. It was probably nothing, right? She'd been stressed about the pregnancy, worried about morning sickness and doctor's appointments. I pushed the thought aside and returned to work. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Lee's name popped up. Hey, sis, I'm guessing you saw. Her voice cut me off, barely above a whisper, tight with an emotion I couldn't identify. Fear. Harvey, where are you right now? Home? Working. What's wrong? Is Bethany there? My heart started to pound. No, she went to the pharmacy. Lee, you're scaring me. Is something wrong with the baby? A long pause. I could hear her breathing, could picture her in her Boston office, surrounded by monitors, her brilliant analytical mind working through something heavy. Get home now. You need to take her to a hospital. A different one. My blood just froze. I swear, it felt like the air got sucked right out of the room. What? Is the baby okay? Do not tell your wife you spoke to me. Lee's voice dropped even lower, urgent, and commanding. Do you hear me? This is crucial. You're scaring me. I shouted, standing up so fast my chair rolled backward. Listen to me carefully, Lee insisted. That ultrasound you sent me. I need you to tell me exactly where Bethany had it done. What facility? What doctor? Everything. My mind raced. Dr. Morrison's office. Monique Morrison. She's an OB/GYN on Elm Street. Lee, please. I know Morrison. We attended a conference together last year, Lee said, her tone professional, almost detached. Harvey, I need you to trust me without asking questions right now. Can you do that? You're my sister. Of course. Get the original ultrasound image, not a photograph. The actual printout. Look at the bottom right corner. There should be a facility identifier code, a date stamp, and a patient ID number. Text me those numbers. Don't call. Text. Why? I demanded, my voice cracking. Because that image has been edited. Harvey. Professionally edited. She paused, and I could hear the hesitation, the sheer weight of what she was about to say. And I think we need to verify some things before I say anything else. Please just do this for me. The ground shifted beneath me. What do you mean edited? The metadata is wrong. The image resolution is inconsistent. Harvey, I've been doing this for 12 years. I've seen thousands of ultrasounds. This one has been digitally manipulated. Lee's voice cracked slightly then. Please, just get me those numbers. If I'm wrong, I'll apologize and we'll laugh about how paranoid I am. But if I'm right, if you're right, then your wife isn't pregnant and we need to find out why she wants you to think she is. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, as the perfect life I'd built started to crumble around me. Chapter 2, the ground cracks. My hands shook as I climbed the stairs to the master bedroom. Bethany kept important documents in her nightstand, insurance cards, appointment reminders, medical records. I'd never had reason to look through them before. Trust had always been the foundation of our marriage. Or so I thought. The ultrasound printout was tucked into a folder labeled baby. I pulled it out, my cybersecurity training kicking in as I examined it with new, terrified eyes. The paper quality was standard thermal paper, like in most medical offices. The image showed what appeared to be an 8-week fetus, clearly visible against the dark background. I photographed the bottom corner with my phone. The facility code read MHC 2891. The date stamp showed last Tuesday. Patient ID, BW4478823. I texted the info to Lee, then sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the image. What had my sister seen that I couldn't? My phone buzzed. It was Lee. Give me 20 minutes. Don't confront her yet. I'm calling in a favor. 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. I paced the bedroom, my mind spinning. Maybe it was a mistake. Medical errors happen all the time. Maybe the equipment glitched. My phone rang. Lee, tell me, I blurted out. I called Monique Morrison directly. We're friendly enough that she took my call. Lee's voice was steady now, chillingly professional. Harvey, she has no patient named Bethany Walters in her system. She never has. The room tilted. I sat down hard on the bed. That patient ID number, Lee continued, it belongs to a woman named Jennifer Velasquez, who had an ultrasound at Morrison's office 3 months ago. Jennifer is 26 weeks pregnant now. Lee paused. The facility code is real. The date stamp has been changed. Bethany somehow got access to another patient's ultrasound and altered the date. How is that even possible? I whispered. She works in pharmaceutical sales. She has access to medical offices, knows the systems, knows how to talk to staff. It wouldn't be hard to photograph an ultrasound during a sales call, especially if she befriended a nurse or a receptionist. Lee's voice softened. And Harvey, I'm so sorry, but there's more. More. I called 2 other OBGYN offices within 10 miles of your house. Asked if they had a Bethany Walters as a patient. None of them do. I can't call every office in the state, but... She trailed off. Have you actually seen her take a pregnancy test? Have you been to any appointments with her? I thought back. Bethany had told me about the positive test 6 weeks ago, showed me the little stick with the 2 pink lines. But I'd been in my office when she'd taken it. She'd come downstairs crying with joy, and I just believed her. The appointments? She'd always gone alone. Morning appointments are easier, she'd said. You're always busy with work in the mornings. I'll record the heartbeat next time. I haven't been to any appointments, I admitted, my voice flat. She always had reasons why I shouldn't come. Has she been showing symptoms? Morning sickness? Fatigue? I thought about it. Bethany had been tired, sure. She'd complained about nausea a few times, but now that I thought about it, she'd never actually gotten sick. She'd just said she felt sick. Jesus, I whispered. There's something else you need to know. Lee's tone changed again, becoming harder. When I was asking around, being discreet about it, I mentioned I was trying to locate a patient. One of the nurses at the 3rd office I called recognized Bethy's name immediately. Why? Because Bethany came in 4 months ago asking about tubal ligation. She wanted to make sure she couldn't get pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stood up, needing to move, needing to do something with the cold, burning rage building in my chest. Why would she do this? I asked, the words raw. Why fake a pregnancy? I don't know. But Harvey, you need to be smart about this. Don't confront her yet. We need to figure out what her endgame is. I'll hire a private investigator. No. Lee cut me off. You're a cybersecurity expert. You find digital dirt for a living. Use your skills. Check her phone records, her email, her bank accounts. Find out what she's planning before she knows you're onto her. I nodded, even though Lee couldn't see me. My shock was crystallizing into something harder, colder. I'd built a career on finding hidden threats, on uncovering vulnerabilities that others missed. It was time to turn those skills on my own wife. One more thing, Lee said. Be careful. People who orchestrate deceptions this elaborate usually have a bigger plan, and they usually don't work alone. After hanging up, I went to my office and locked the door. I pulled up my remote access software, the same tools I used for client security audits. I'd set up the home network myself, with admin access to every device connected to it, including Bethany's phone. It took me less than 10 minutes to clone her phone's data to my encrypted server. Text messages, call logs, emails, photos, everything. What I found in her messages made my blood run cold. Hundreds of texts to a number saved as D. They went back 8 months, starting just after our second anniversary. The messages were intimate, sexual, planning meetups while I was away on business trips. But it was the recent messages that revealed the true horror. D. How much longer do we have to keep this up? Bethany, just a few more weeks. He'll sign the life insurance increase this month. Has to. D. And if he doesn't? Bethany, then we move to Plan B. The accident. D. I still think Plan B is risky. Bethany, $2 million isn't risky. It's worth it. Once he's gone, we're set for life. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. She wasn't just faking a pregnancy. She was planning to kill me. I scrolled through more messages, piecing together the scheme. Bethany had convinced me to increase my life insurance policy 3 months ago, citing the baby's future needs. The new policy for $2 million was set to become active in 2 weeks. The accident messages were vague but chilling, something about a hiking trip I had planned for next month. Something about making it look natural. I opened the photo she'd exchanged with Dee, and my stomach churned. The man in the pictures was Dean Mann, someone I recognized. Dean worked as a personal trainer at the gym Bethany attended. He was younger than me, muscular, with a kind of cocky grin that made me want to punch him. More searching revealed financial records. Bethany had opened a separate bank account I didn't know about. Small deposits, nothing that would raise flags, but they added up. She'd been skimming money from our joint account for months. I leaned back, my mind moving from shock to cold, hard calculation. Lee was right. I needed to be smart about this. Going to the police now? It would be my word against hers. The insurance policy wasn't active yet. The accident texts were vague enough to be explained away. No, I needed more. I needed to catch them in the act, to document everything, to build a case so airtight that Bethany and Dean would never see freedom again. And if I was going to do this, I was going to do it my way. I pulled up a blank document and began typing. I was a security expert. I knew how to find vulnerabilities. I knew how to exploit them. And I knew how to set a trap that my enemies would never see coming. By the time Bethany came home 2 hours later, I had already begun laying the groundwork for their destruction. Chapter 3. The predators emerged. Bethany walked into the house carrying shopping bags, her smile bright and innocent. Sorry I took so long. I ran into an old friend at the pharmacy. I looked up from my laptop, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. No problem. How are you feeling? Tired. The baby's really taking it out of me. She placed a hand on her stomach, a gesture I now recognized as pure theater. I think I'll lie down for a bit. Good idea. You need rest. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. After she went upstairs, I returned to my research. I'd been digging into Dean Mann's background, and what I'd found was illuminating. Dean Mann, 28, had a record. Nothing major, a DUI 3 years ago, a dismissed assault charge from a bar fight, but it painted a picture of a man with poor impulse control and a taste for easy money. He'd worked at 3 different gyms in the past 5 years, always moving on after a few months. I cross-referenced the dates with Bethany's calendar. She'd started working out at Dean's current gym, Peak Fitness, 9 months ago. The affair had begun shortly after. But there was more. I found social media posts showing Dean with expensive watches, designer clothes, sports betting wins. The man lived beyond his means, always looking for the next score. He was exactly the kind of person who'd agree to a murder for money. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Vernon Hancock. Lee gave me your number. I understand you need discreet assistance. Vernon Hancock. The name rang a bell. I did a quick search and found him, a retired FBI agent who now ran a private investigation firm. Lee had promised to connect me with someone trustworthy. I called the number. Vernon answered on the first ring. Mr. Walters, your sister explained the situation in general terms. I'm very sorry. Vernon's voice was gravelly, authoritative. She mentioned you might need help documenting evidence. I'm a cybersecurity consultant, I said. I can handle the digital side, but I need someone who can do physical surveillance without being detected, and I need it done legally enough that it can be used in court. I can do that. What's your timeline? I explained what I'd learned, the fake pregnancy, the life insurance policy, the planned accident. Vernon listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. $2 million motive. Clear conspiracy. Premeditation. You've got the beginnings of a solid case, Vernon said. But you're right to want more. We need them on record discussing specific plans. Audio, video, if possible. I can install monitoring software on her phone remotely, I said. But I need to be careful about admissibility. Let me worry about admissibility. You focus on gathering evidence through legal means. Anything you can access as the homeowner, the joint account holder, the husband. I'll handle the external surveillance. Vernon paused. There's something you should know, though. Cases like this, where someone's planning your murder, time is critical. If they sense you're onto them, they might accelerate their plans. The insurance policy activates in 12 days, I said. I don't think they'll move before then unless they get spooked. Be careful, Mr. Walters. Play the loving husband. Don't give them any reason to suspect you know. After hanging up with Vernon, I spent the next hour setting up monitoring protocols. I installed a keylogger on Bethany's laptop, set up alerts for specific keywords in her messages, and created a secure server to store all the evidence. Then I did something I'd learned in my years of cybersecurity work. I looked for the pattern behind the pattern. Bethany wasn't smart enough to plan this alone. She was organized, sure, but this level of deception required someone with experience. The fake ultrasound, the careful timing, the insurance scheme, it all suggested someone had done this before. I dug deeper into Dean Mann's history, previous relationships, former girlfriends. It took 2 hours, but I found it. 5 years ago, Dean had briefly dated a woman named Trudy Kane in Phoenix. Trudy had been married at the time. 6 months after the affair began, Trudy's husband, a wealthy real estate developer, died in a boating accident. The insurance payout was $1.5 million. The investigation had ruled it accidental, but I found forum posts, archived news articles where the husband's family had raised questions. The case had gone cold, and Trudy had eventually married Dean. They divorced 2 years later, with Trudy keeping most of the money. I felt the pieces clicking together. Dean had done this before. He'd helped a married woman kill her husband for insurance money. Now he was doing it again with Bethany. But this time, I wasn't going to end up at the bottom of a lake. I picked up my phone and called Vernon. I need you to look into a woman named Trudy Kane in Phoenix. I think our friend Dean has done this before. On it. In the meantime, I'll start surveillance tomorrow. I've got a female operative who can join Peak Fitness. Get close to Dean. See what he says when he thinks no one important is listening. Perfect. And Vernon, I want to know every detail of their plan. Not so I can avoid it. My voice hardened. So I can turn it against them. That night, I lay in bed next to Bethany, listening to her breathe. She'd curled against me, her hand resting on my chest, playing the role of devoted, pregnant wife. I thought about our wedding day, the vows we'd exchanged. Had any of it been real? Or had she been planning this from the start? My phone buzzed with a message. Vernon. Found something interesting about Trudy Kane. She's broke. Declared bankruptcy last year. Dean took her for almost everything in the divorce. I smiled in the darkness. So Dean had a pattern. Seduce married women. Help them kill their husbands. Take the insurance money. Then disappear. He was a professional at this. But I had something Dean and Bethany didn't expect. I had my sister's warning. I had time to prepare. And I had skills they couldn't match. As Bethany slept beside me, dreaming of her $2 million payday, I began planning their nightmare. The trap was set. Now I just needed to bait it perfectly. Chapter 4. The trap takes shape. I spent the next 3 days playing the perfect husband while building my case. Every morning, I kissed Bethany goodbye and told her I loved her. Every evening, I asked about her day and the baby. And every spare moment, I was gathering evidence. Vernon's operative, a woman named Erica Mack, had joined Peak Fitness and befriended Dean within 24 hours. Her reports were damning. Subject is arrogant, Erica texted. Bragged about setting up a big payday to another trainer. Mentioned having a rich boyfriend who's about to have an accident. Direct quote, some guys are just too stupid to see what's coming. I saved everything, the texts, the photos, the timeline. I'd learned from my years in cybersecurity that the key to catching criminals wasn't just evidence. It was overwhelming evidence. So much that there was no possible defense. No way to explain it away. Vernon called on the 4th day. I found Trudy Kane. She's living in a trailer park outside Phoenix, working as a waitress. I convinced her to talk. And Dean's MO is consistent. He targets women in unhappy marriages, usually with money, builds a relationship, suggests the insurance scheme, helps plan the accident, then takes his cut. Vernon's voice darkened. Trudy says he's done this at least 3 times that she knows of. Not all of them ended in death. Some of the wives backed out at the last minute, but 2 didn't. I felt cold. He's killed before. Trudy couldn't prove it, and neither could I. The accidents were clean. 1 drowning, 1 hiking fall. Both ruled accidental. But she's certain Dean was responsible. Vernon paused. She also said Dean has a partner. Someone who helps him plan the accidents. Makes them look natural. A partner? Who? She only met him once. Big guy. Works as a contractor. Trudy thought his name was Curtis or Kurt something. She said he was scary. Dead eyes. Talked about killing like it was a business transaction. My mind raced. I searched Peak Fitness's website and found it. Kurt Marr, listed as a contractor who'd done recent renovation work on the gym. That's how they'd met. More digging revealed Kurt Marr's history. Former military, dishonorably discharged for reasons sealed in classified documents. Several restraining orders from ex-girlfriends. A pattern of violence barely concealed beneath a veneer of respectability. So, it wasn't just Bethany and Dean. There was a third conspirator, someone who actually knew how to kill and make it look accidental. I called Vernon. I found the partner. Kurt Marr. Former military. Violent history. We need surveillance on him, too. Already on it. I pulled his work records. He's scheduled to do some repairs on a hiking trail in Black Rock State Park next week. Vernon's voice was grim. I'm betting that's where your accident was supposed to happen. Black Rock State Park. I'd mentioned wanting to hike there before winter set in. I'd told Bethany about it weeks ago, said it would be a nice trip before the baby came. She'd encouraged me, told me I should go, that the fresh air would be good for my stress. Now I understood why. Vernon, I need you to check the trail. Find out what they're planning on it. But Harvey, we're running out of time. The insurance policy activates in 7 days. Once it does, they might move fast. I knew Vernon was right, but I needed everything documented, every piece of evidence locked down. I needed to ensure that when this was over, Bethany, Dean, and Kurt would spend the rest of their lives in prison. That evening, Bethany made my favorite dinner, steak and potatoes. She was being extra attentive, playing the doting wife to perfection. You seem stressed, she said, pouring me wine. Maybe you should take that hiking trip. Clear your head before the baby comes. I smiled at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. The way she tilted her head, feigning concern, the slight eagerness in her eyes. She was pushing me toward my death. You know what? You're right. I'll go this weekend. I took her hand. Thank you for being so understanding. She leaned in and kissed me. That's what partners do. We take care of each other. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so tragic. After dinner, while Bethany was in the shower, I checked the monitoring software. New messages between her and Dean. Dean, he's taking the bait. Kurt says everything's ready. Bethany, make it quick. I don't want him to suffer. Dean, since when do you care? Bethany, I don't. I just don't want any complications. I photographed the messages, adding them to my growing file. Then I saw something that made my blood boil. Photos Bethany had sent to Dean. Pictures of me sleeping unaware. Pictures of me at my computer, working. She'd been cataloging my routines, my patterns, helping them plan my murder. My phone rang. Lee, how are you holding up? She asked. I'm managing. Vernon's been helpful. Harvey, I need to tell you something. Lee's voice was hesitant. I've been thinking about why I never liked Bethany. I couldn't put my finger on it before, but now I realize she reminded me of someone. A patient I had 3 years ago, a woman who came in claiming she'd been assaulted by her husband. The scans didn't match her story, but she was convincing. I almost believed her. Lee paused. Later, I found out she'd faked the whole thing to get a restraining order so she could clean out their joint accounts before divorcing him. She was a con artist. Bethany's a con artist, I said, the words heavy. I think she's been one for a long time. I looked into her employment history. She's worked for 7 different pharmaceutical companies in 5 years. That's unusual. Most sales reps stay with one company. Lee's voice hardened. I think she's been running schemes, moving on before anyone catches on. I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about the fake pregnancy or the insurance plot. Bethany was a predator, and I was just her latest mark. But unlike her previous victims, I knew how to fight back. Lee, I need to ask you something. I kept my voice steady. If this goes bad, if something happens to me, nothing's going to happen to you. But if it does, promise me you'll make sure they go to prison. Every single one of them. A long silence. Then I promise. But you're going to be fine. You're the smartest person I know. If anyone can outsmart these people, it's you. After hanging up, I pulled up my planning document. Vernon's team had identified the location where the accident was supposed to happen, a cliff trail with a 100-foot drop. Kurt had been seen loosening the guardrail, creating a weak point that would give way under weight. They wanted to make it look like I had fallen while hiking alone. Simple, clean, accidental. But I had a different plan. I opened a new file and began typing. The trap was almost complete. In 3 days, I would spring it. And when I did, Bethany, Dean, and Kurt would walk right into it, never realizing that the prey had become the predator. Chapter 5. Moving the pieces the next morning, I put the first phase of my plan into motion. I drove to my bank and withdrew $50,000 in cash, telling the teller it was for a business investment. Then I stopped at a law office downtown. I need to make some changes to my will, I told my attorney, Mitchell Hobbs, a friend from college. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. Everything okay? You just updated it 6 months ago. The baby, I lied smoothly. I want to make sure everything's protected if something happens to me. Of course. What changes? I had planned this carefully. I want to add a clause that if I die within the next year under circumstances that are later determined to be criminal, all assets go to my sister Lee, and a fund should be established to pursue prosecution of any involved parties. Mitchell frowned. That's unusually specific, Harvey. Is there something you need to tell me? Just being cautious. You know how it is. New baby, new responsibilities. I want to make sure Beth and the baby are protected, but also that if anything suspicious happens, there's no financial motive. I kept my tone casual. Call it professional paranoia from too many years in cybersecurity. Mitchell nodded slowly. I'll draft it today. You can sign tomorrow. Perfect. If Bethany knew about the will change, it would throw a wrench in her plans. But I wasn't going to tell her. Not yet. Next, I called the insurance company. I need to verify my policy details, I told the agent. Specifically, I want to confirm the suicide exclusion clause and the 2-year contestability period. The agent walked me through it. The policy had a 2-year contestability period, meaning the company could investigate and deny claims if fraud was suspected during the first 2 years. The suicide exclusion was standard, no payout if the insured killed himself within 2 years of the policy start date. But there was something else I had been counting on. If the circumstances of death were suspicious, the insurance company would launch an investigation before paying out. That investigation could take months, even years. Bethany was counting on a quick payout. She had no idea how many obstacles I was about to put in her path. That afternoon, Vernon called. We've got audio. Erica wore a wire to the gym. Dean talked. What did he say? I demanded. Everything. He described the whole plan to her, thinking she was interested in him. The hiking trail, the loose railing, how Kurt would be nearby to make sure you actually fell. He even mentioned the insurance money and how he and Bethany were going to split it. Vernon's voice was triumphant. We've got him. And by extension, we've got all of them. Is the audio admissible? Erica is a licensed investigator, and Dean was in a public space. Plus, she's willing to testify. It's solid. Vernon paused. But Harvey, we need to bring in the police now. We have enough for an arrest. Not yet. I need them to make their move. I need attempted murder charges, not just conspiracy. That's risky. If something goes wrong, it won't, I said, my voice like steel. I've spent my entire career thinking like hackers, anticipating attacks before they happen. This is just another security breach, and I know exactly how to patch it. That evening, I staged my next move. Over dinner, I told Bethany I'd been to the bank. I withdrew some cash for the hiking trip, I said casually. You know, emergency money in case something happens. Bethany's eyes flickered. $50,000 for a hiking trip? I was thinking about the baby. What if something happens to me? I want you to have immediate access to funds, not be stuck waiting for insurance or bank transfers. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm going to put it in the safe. The combination is our anniversary. 08272022. I watched her process this information. Saw the wheels turning. $50,000 in cash, easily accessible, on top of the $2 million insurance. I was sweetening the pot, making the risk even more worthwhile. That's very thoughtful, Bethany said, her voice soft. But I'm sure you'll be fine. You're careful. I hope so. But I'm also a realist. I squeezed her hand. I love you, Beth. I want you and the baby to be taken care of no matter what. She smiled at me. And for a moment, I wondered if there was any guilt behind those green eyes. Any regret for what she was planning. But when she leaned in to kiss me, all I saw was calculation. Later, after Bethany went to bed, I checked the monitoring software. As expected, she'd immediately texted Dean. Bethany, he put $50K in the safe. Combination is our anniversary. Dean, nice bonus. We stick to the plan. Bethany, absolutely. This weekend. Make sure Kurt is ready. Dean, he's been ready. Question is, are you Bethany? Bethany, I've been ready since I said I do. This has always been the plan. I stared at that last message for a long time. This has always been the plan. She'd married me, intending to kill me. Every moment of our 3 years together had been a lie, a setup for this moment. I should have felt devastated. Instead, I felt focused. The next day, I met with Vernon in a parking garage downtown. Here's how it's going to work, I said, pulling out a map of Black Rock State Park. I'm going to hike to the Cliff Trail Saturday morning. You'll have teams positioned here, here, and here. I pointed to spots on the map. When Kurt makes his move, you document everything, then intervene before anyone actually gets hurt. Vernon studied the map. You're using yourself as bait. I'm using myself as proof. There's a difference. My smile was cold. Bethany and Dean think they're running a con. They have no idea I've been running one on them. What about after? How do you want to handle the arrests? Simultaneous. Kurt at the park. Bethany and Dean together somewhere they'll both be. I want them to see it coming at the last second, to realize they've been played. Vernon nodded slowly. You know, in all my years doing this work, I've never seen someone turn the tables quite like you're planning. I told you, I'm a cybersecurity expert. I find vulnerabilities and exploit them. My expression hardened. Bethany and Dean's vulnerability is their arrogance. They think I'm stupid, that I don't see what's happening. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Friday evening, I staged my final preparation. I loaded my hiking gear into my car, kissed Bethany goodbye, and told her I'd be leaving early in the morning. "Be careful out there," she said, hugging me. "I love you." "I love you too," I replied. The words were automatic, but empty. That night, I barely slept. Instead, I reviewed every piece of evidence, every detail of the plan. Vernon's teams were in position. The police had been briefed and would be standing by. Tomorrow, when the sun rose, the trap would spring. And Bethany, Dean, and Kurt would spend the rest of their lives paying for what they tried to do. I checked my phone one last time before attempting sleep. A final text from Bethany to Dean, sent after she thought I was asleep. "Bethany, tomorrow I'm free. Tomorrow we're rich. Tomorrow it all begins." I smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow it all ends. Chapter 6. The trap springs. Saturday morning came with a blood-red sunrise. I dressed in my hiking gear, moving quietly so as not to wake Bethany. She stirred as I opened the bedroom door. "Be safe," she murmured sleepily. "Always am," I replied. I drove to Black Rock State Park, my truck loaded with hiking equipment and a backpack. Vernon and his team were already in position. 3 surveillance points, hidden cameras, and 2 undercover officers posing as hikers. I parked in the lot at 7:03 a.m. I sent a text to Bethany. "Here. Weather's perfect. Love you." Her reply came instantly. "Love you too. Enjoy your hike." The trail wound through pine forests before climbing toward the cliffs. I moved at a steady pace, my mind surprisingly clear despite what was coming. Every 50 yards, I marked my position with my phone's GPS, creating a digital trail of my location. Vernon's voice came through my hidden earpiece. "Subject 1 is on site. Kurt Marr has parked. He's carrying what looks like tools." "Copy that," I whispered. The trail narrowed as it approached the cliff section. This was where Kurt had loosened the railing, creating a weak point that would give way under pressure. It was clever. The railing would look intact, but a hard lean against it would send someone tumbling 100 feet to the rocks below. I reached the section and stopped, pretending to admire the view. Through my peripheral vision, I saw movement in the trees. Kurt, positioning himself, waiting. Vernon's voice. "We see him. He's watching you. Wait for him to make contact." I pulled out my water bottle, taking my time. I needed Kurt to commit, to do something that would be captured on camera and constitute attempted murder. Footsteps behind me. I turned to see Kurt emerging from the trail, dressed in contractor gear, carrying a toolbox. "Morning," Kurt said, his voice friendly. "Doing some trail maintenance. You might want to avoid the railing up ahead. It's a bit unstable." I smiled. "Thanks for the warning. Appreciate it." "No problem." "Hey, you dropped something back there." Kurt pointed down the trail. I turned to look, and in that moment, Kurt rushed forward. Strong hands grabbed my shoulders, shoving me toward the weakened railing. But I had been ready. I'd spent years training in martial arts, a hobby Bethany had never known about. I dropped my center of gravity, twisted, and used Kurt's momentum against him. Kurt stumbled forward, off balance. I stepped aside, and Kurt crashed into the railing. The wood splintered with a sharp crack. For a moment, Kurt teetered on the edge, arms windmilling. I could have let him fall. Part of me wanted to. Instead, I grabbed Kurt's jacket and hauled him back from the edge. "Got you," I said coldly. Vernon's team burst from the trees, weapons drawn. "Freeze. Hands where I can see them." Kurt's face went white. "What the hell?" "You're under arrest for attempted murder," Vernon said, pulling out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." I stepped back, pulling out my phone. I called Lee. "It's done. Phase 1 complete." "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice laced with fear. "I'm fine. Better than fine." I looked at Kurt, now being led away in handcuffs. 1 down, 2 to go. Meanwhile, across town, Bethany met Dean at a cafe they'd used before for their secret meetings. She was nervous, checking her phone constantly. "Relax," Dean said. Sipping his coffee. "Kurt knows what he's doing. By noon, Harvey will be just another tragic hiking accident, and we'll be in the clear." I can't help it. I keep thinking something will go wrong. Nothing's going wrong. We've planned this perfectly. Dean reached across the table and took her hand. "In a few hours, you're going to be a grieving widow. Then, after a respectful waiting period, you and I ride off into the sunset with $2 million. Bethany smiled, relaxing slightly. "You really think it's that easy?" "It's always been that easy. Trust me, I've done." The cafe door opened. Detective Eric Torres walked in, followed by 3 uniformed officers. Dean saw them first. His face went pale. "We need to leave now." But it was too late. Detective Torres approached their table, badge out. "Bethany Walters. Dean Mann. You're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." Bethany's coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. "What?" "No. There must be some mistake." "No mistake, ma'am. We've been listening to your conversations for the past week. We have text messages, recorded conversations, and as of 30 minutes ago, we have attempted murder on camera. Torres nodded to the officers who moved forward with handcuffs. You have the right to remain silent. Dean lunged from his chair, trying to run, but an officer tackled him before he made it 3 steps. Bethany sat frozen, her mind clearly racing, trying to understand how this had happened. Where's my husband? She asked, her voice small. Is Harvey? Your husband is fine, Torres said coldly. Better than you're going to be for a very long time. As they led Bethany and Dean out in handcuffs, I pulled up across the street in my truck. I'd driven straight from the park, wanting to see this moment. Through the cafe window, Bethany's eyes met mine. For just a second, the mask fell away. No more fake smiles. No more loving wife act. Just rage and disbelief that she'd been caught. It was like looking at a stranger. And I took a picture. Then I drove away, leaving my wife in the hands of the police. That evening, I sat in my living room with Lee and Vernon, reviewing everything that had happened. Kurt's already talking, Vernon reported, trying to cut a deal. He's given us details on 3 previous accidents he helped Dean arrange. 2 of them were ruled natural deaths at the time. The families are being contacted. And Bethany? Lee asked. She's not talking. Lawyered up immediately. Vernon shook his head. But it doesn't matter. We have text messages showing premeditation, recorded conversations, the fake ultrasound, the fake pregnancy, and attempted murder on camera. The DA says it's the most airtight case he's seen in years. I leaned back, feeling the weight of the past week settling on me. How long until trial? 6 months, maybe. But with this much evidence, they'll probably take a plea deal. Vernon stood. I'll leave you 2 alone. Harvey, you did good work. Not many people could have handled this the way you did. After Vernon left, Lee moved to sit beside me. How are you really doing? Honestly? I don't know. I stared at my hands. 3 years of my life were a lie. I thought I knew her. I thought we were building something real. She was a con artist, a predator. This isn't about you being fooled. It's about her being convincing. I know. Intellectually, I know that. I looked at my sister. But it still hurts. And the baby. God, I wanted that baby to be real. I was excited about being a father. Lee put her arm around me. You're going to get through this. And someday you'll find someone real, someone who deserves you. But first, you need to heal. I nodded. Thank you for warning me. If you hadn't caught that fake ultrasound. You're my brother. I'll always have your back. Lee squeezed my shoulder. Always. Later that night, alone in the house that felt both familiar and foreign now, I went through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. This was supposed to be where I'd raise my child, where I'd grow old with Bethany. Instead, it was a crime scene, a monument to lies. I found the ultrasound picture in Bethany's nightstand, the fake image that had started everything. I stared at it for a long moment, then tore it in half. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of rebuilding. I'd file for divorce. I'd sell the house. I'd move forward. But tonight, I allowed myself to grieve. Not for Bethany, but for the life I'd thought I was building. The future that had never really existed. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Jennifer Velasquez. The police told me my ultrasound was stolen and used in a crime. I just wanted to say I'm sorry that happened and I hope you're okay. My baby boy is healthy. I hope that brings you some comfort. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I replied, thank you. That does help. Take care of him. I looked around the empty house one last time, then turned off the lights and went upstairs. Tomorrow would be the first day of the rest of my life. And unlike Bethany, Dean, and Kurt, I'd face it as a free man. The trap had worked perfectly. Justice would be served. And Harvey Walters would survive. Chapter 7. The reckoning. The next 8 weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, media attention, and slowly rebuilding a life that had been demolished. I threw myself into work, taking on 3 new high-profile clients who'd heard about my story and wanted someone who understood deception at a fundamental level. The trial date was set for early December. The DA, a sharp woman named Lori Casey, called me weekly with updates. Dean Man is trying to flip on Bethany, she told me during one call. Says it was all her idea, that she manipulated him. Is that going to work? I asked. Not with the evidence we have. The text messages show it was collaborative. Besides, we found evidence Dean did this with at least 2 other women. The Phoenix police are reopening cases now. Lori's voice was satisfied. They're all going down, Harvey. All 3 of them. But I wanted more than prison sentences. I wanted them to understand what they'd tried to take from me. Vernon helped arrange a meeting with Kurt Marr's attorney. Kurt had accepted a plea deal, 20 years in exchange for testimony against Bethany and Dean. I stood in the prison visiting room, separated from Kurt by bulletproof glass. The big man looked smaller now, diminished in his orange jumpsuit. Why? I asked. We'd never even met. Kurt stared at me for a long moment. Money. That's all. Dean offered me $50,000 to make it look like an accident. I've done it before. It's just business. Just business. I repeated. You are going to murder me, destroy my family, traumatize everyone who cared about me for $50,000? You don't understand. When you've done it as many times as I have, it stops being about people. It's just a job. Kurt leaned forward. I'm sorry, for what it's worth. It's worth nothing, I said coldly. You're going to spend 20 years in a cage. I hope every single day feels like an eternity. I left without looking back. Dean Mann refused to meet with me, but his lawyer made it clear that Dean was terrified. The evidence against him was overwhelming. 2 of his previous girlfriends had come forward with stories of him suggesting insurance schemes. One had even recorded him talking about how easy it was to fake accidents. He's looking at life without parole, Lori told me. Murder for hire, conspiracy, pattern of criminal behavior. The judge is going to throw the book at him. But it was Bethany that I truly needed to confront. I waited until the week before trial. Then I sent word through Lori that I wanted a meeting. Bethany's attorney initially refused, but Bethany herself agreed. We met in a conference room at the county jail. Bethany wore an orange jumpsuit, her auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup. She looked years older than the woman I'd married. Hello, Harvey, she said when the guard brought her in. Bethany. I kept my voice neutral. We sat across from each other, her attorney beside her, silence stretching between us. I wanted to see you face to face, I said. I wanted to understand. Was any of it real? The wedding, the marriage, anything. Bethany looked at me for a long moment. Then she sighed. Do you really want the truth? Yes. No. None of it was real. She leaned back in her chair. I saw you at that conference. Saw the expensive watch. The confident way you talked about your business. I did my research. Successful company, no family except a sister, no children. You were perfect. Perfect for what? For exactly this. You were my retirement plan. 2 years of marriage, then the baby angle, then the insurance, then the accident. Her voice was matter-of-fact, as if discussing a business proposal. I've been doing this since I was 23. You would have been my 4th. I felt something cold settle in my chest. 4th? You've done this before. 3 times. 2 succeeded. 1 backed out at the last minute. The successful ones netted me about $4 million total. She shrugged. But I spent it badly. Made poor investments, so I needed another score. That's when I found you. The others, did they die? One did. Hiking accident in Colorado. Very sad. The other was a car crash. Also very sad. She said it without emotion, as if reading a weather report. You were supposed to be number 3. I stood up, unable to sit anymore. How do you live with yourself? Easily. Men like you. Successful, smart, but lonely. You're not hard to find. You want to believe you found love, found the one. So you ignore red flags. Ignore your instincts. Bethany's smile was bitter. Your sister saw through me immediately, you know. I could tell. But you didn't listen to her because you wanted the fantasy. So, is this my fault? No, it's just how the world works. Predators and prey. I'm a predator, Harvey. I was born this way. You were prey. She leaned forward. The difference is you turned the tables. You became a predator, too. And you won. I'm not like you. Aren't you? You set a trap. You manipulated us. You used us exactly like we were trying to use you. Bethany's eyes were hard. The only difference is your trap worked and ours didn't. I stood silent, processing her words. Was she right? Had I become like them in stopping them? No, I said finally. The difference is I was protecting myself from people trying to kill me. You were trying to murder an innocent man for money. Don't try to make us equivalent. Believe what you want. Bethany sat back. I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. You get to walk free. You won. Congratulations. I studied her, looking for any sign of remorse, any hint of the woman I thought I loved. But there was nothing. She was exactly what she'd always been, a predator who'd simply been caught. I want you to know something, I said quietly. Every day you spend in prison. Every morning you wake up in a cell. Every night you go to sleep on that uncomfortable mattress. I want you to remember that you did this to yourself. You chose this, and you deserved it. I turned to leave. But Bethany's voice stopped me. Harvey, for what it's worth, you were one of the good ones. In another life, if I'd been a different person, I might have actually loved you. I looked back at her. But you're not a different person, and you never will be. I walked out, leaving her behind. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages, recorded conversations, the fake ultrasound, witness testimony from Erica Mack, Vernon's surveillance footage, and Kurt's confession. Dean Mann's defense tried to argue he'd been manipulated by Bethany, but the evidence of his previous crimes destroyed that narrative. His pattern was clear. He was a serial accomplice to murder-for-hire schemes. Bethany's defense tried to argue she'd never intended to go through with it, that it was all fantasy role-play with Dean. But the texts about timelines, the fake pregnancy, the insurance policy, it all pointed to careful, premeditated planning. I testified for 2 days, walking the jury through the discovery process, showing them how I'd uncovered the conspiracy. The fake ultrasound was particularly damning. Medical experts testified that it had been professionally altered and that Bethany had never been pregnant. On December 15th, the jury deliberated for 6 hours. I sat in the courtroom, Lee beside me, as the jury filed back in. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how do you find the defendant, Bethany Walters? Guilty. On the charge of fraud? Guilty. On the charge of attempted murder? Guilty. The verdicts came one after another. Each one another nail in Bethany's coffin. She sat motionless as they were read, her face blank. Dean Mann's verdicts were equally damning. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing 3 weeks later, Judge Owen Peterson showed no mercy. Mrs. Walters, you orchestrated a scheme of breathtaking cruelty, the judge said. You didn't just plot to kill your husband. You made him love you first. You made him trust you, believe he was starting a family with you, all while planning his death. This court finds your actions to be among the most calculating and heartless I've encountered. He sentenced Bethany to life without possibility of parole. Dean Mann received the same sentence, with an additional 20 years for his previous crimes. As the bailiffs led them away, Bethany looked at me one last time. No smile, no anger, just emptiness. I felt nothing but relief. That evening, I had dinner with Lee at our favorite restaurant. It's over, Lee said, raising her wine glass. It's really over. It is. I clinked my glass against hers. Thank you for everything. If you hadn't caught that fake ultrasound, you would have figured it out eventually. You're too smart not to. Lee smiled. I'm proud of you, little brother. You could have fallen apart. Instead, you fought back. I didn't have a choice. Yes, you did. A lot of people would have just reported it to the police and hoped for the best. You took control. You gathered evidence, built a case, made sure they couldn't escape justice. Lee's eyes were warm. That takes courage. I thought about Bethany's words in the jail. You became a predator, too. Maybe she'd been right in a way. I'd used my skills, my intelligence, my ability to think like my enemies to trap them. But I'd done it to survive, to ensure justice. That made all the difference. What now? Lee asked. What's next for Harvey Walters? I looked out the window at the city lights. I'm selling the house. Too many bad memories. I'm thinking about moving to Boston, actually. Be closer to you. I'd like that. And I'm going to keep building my company. Focus on work for a while. Maybe eventually I'll be ready to trust someone again. I smiled slightly. But not for a long time. That's probably wise. Lee reached across the table and squeezed my hand. But when you are ready, you'll know. And you'll be smarter about it. This experience, as terrible as it was, taught you something. What's that? That you're stronger than you thought. That you can face anything and survive. Lee's smile was fierce. They tried to destroy you, Harvey, and you destroyed them instead. I nodded slowly. She was right. I'd survived. I'd won. And that was enough. For now, that was more than enough. Chapter 8, New Beginnings. 6 months later, I stood in my new office in Boston, looking out at the harbor. Walters Security Solutions had expanded, opening a second location with Lee's help. I'd hired 5 new employees, including Vernon Hancock's daughter, who'd proven to be brilliant at digital forensics. The Boston office was sleek, modern, and most importantly, had no memories of Bethany. My phone rang. It was Lori Casey, the DA. Harvey, I wanted to give you an update. Remember how I said we were investigating Dean Mann's other victims? I remember. We've got justice for 2 of them. The families of the men who died in Colorado and Phoenix are pursuing wrongful death civil suits against Dean's estate. Not that there's much money there, but it's something. Lori paused. We also found 2 other women he was working with. Both are in custody now. Your case opened up a whole network we didn't know existed. I felt a wave of satisfaction. Good. They all deserve to face consequences. There's more. Bethany's been getting letters in prison. We've been monitoring them. Turns out she had a mentor, an older woman who taught her the con. The FBI is investigating now. How deep does this go? Deeper than we thought. There might be a whole group of women running this kind of scheme. Lori's voice hardened. But because of you, we're shutting it down. You didn't just save yourself, Harvey. You saved future victims. After the call ended, I sat at my desk, processing the information. What I thought was a personal betrayal had been part of something larger, a network of predators targeting vulnerable men. But I'd stopped it. Or at least, I'd started the process of stopping it. My intercom buzzed. Mr. Walters, you have a visitor. Says she knew your wife. I frowned. Send her in. A woman in her 40s entered, well-dressed, with dark hair and nervous eyes. Mr. Walters, I'm Teresa Bolton. I need to talk to you about Bethany. I gestured to a chair. What about her? Teresa sat down, wringing her hands. I'm her half-sister. We have the same mother. I didn't know about what she was doing until I saw the trial on the news. She looked up, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry. I need you to know, she wasn't always like this. What do you mean? Our mother, she was like Bethany. A con artist, a grifter. She married 5 times, each husband wealthier than the last. She taught Bethany everything. How to read men, how to manipulate them, how to get what she wanted. Teresa wiped her eyes. I refused to learn. I left home at 18 and never looked back. But Bethany, she embraced it. I leaned back in my chair. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know it wasn't your fault. You couldn't have seen it coming. Bethany spent her whole life learning how to be convincing. She practiced on our stepfathers, on family, friends, on anyone she could. Teresa's voice broke. I tried to reach out to her over the years. Tried to get her to leave that life. She wouldn't listen. I appreciate you telling me, I said quietly. But it doesn't change what she did. I know. I'm not asking you to forgive her. She deserves everything she got. Teresa stood. I just wanted you to know that there are people in her family who are horrified by what she did and who think you're incredibly brave for fighting back the way you did. After Teresa left, I sat alone in my office, thinking about the cycle of predation. Bethany had been taught to be a predator by her mother. How many others were out there, learning the same skills, targeting the same kinds of victims? But I'd broken that cycle, at least in my own life. And in doing so, I'd helped break it for others. My phone buzzed with a text from Lee. Dinner tonight. I have someone I want you to meet. I smiled despite myself. My sister had been trying to set me up for months now, despite my protests. But maybe it was time. Maybe I was ready to trust again, carefully this time, with my eyes wide open. I texted back, who is it? Lee replied, a friend from the hospital. She's a cardiac surgeon, divorced, no criminal record. I checked. And she thinks your story is impressive rather than scary. I laughed. You ran a background check on your friend? Harvey, after what happened with Bethany. You're damn right I did. She's clean. Plus, she's funny and she makes the best lasagna I've ever had. I thought about it for a moment, then replied, okay, but just dinner. No promises. That's all I'm asking. 7 p.m. at Giacomo's. Don't be late. That evening, I arrived at the restaurant to find Lee already seated with a woman about my age. She had dark blonde hair, a warm smile, and laugh lines around her eyes. Harvey, this is Dr. Roxanne Murphy. Roxy, my baby brother, Harvey. Roxanne stood and shook my hand. Her grip was firm, confident. Nice to meet you. Lee told me a lot about you. All good things, I hope, I said, sitting down. Well, she mentioned you almost got murdered by your ex-wife, but you outsmarted her and sent her to prison for life. Roxanne's smile was bright. So, complicated things, but ultimately impressive. I found myself laughing. That's one way to put it. Dinner was easier than I'd expected. Roxanne was funny, sharp, and refreshingly direct. She talked about her work in cardiology, her terrible divorce from a gambling addict, her love of sailing. Lee told me you're in cybersecurity, Roxanne said over dessert. That must be interesting work. It is. I basically get paid to think like criminals and find vulnerabilities before they can be exploited. Kind of like what you did with your ex-wife. I paused, then nodded. Exactly like that, actually. I saw the vulnerability in their plan and exploited it. Good for you. Roxanne's expression was serious. A lot of people would have just been victims. You refused to be. We talked for another hour, and when the evening ended, I found myself not wanting it to end. I'd like to do this again, I said as we stood outside the restaurant. I'd like that, too, Roxanne smiled. But fair warning, I'm going to be cautious. My ex really did a number on me. I understand completely. I'm going to be cautious, too. Good. Then we'll be cautiously optimistic together. She squeezed my hand. Good night, Harvey. As I drove home, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. I'd been through hell. I'd faced betrayal, deception, and an attempt on my life. But I'd survived. I'd won. And now, slowly, carefully, I was building a new life. One based on truth instead of lies. On genuine connection instead of manipulation. It wouldn't be easy. The scars from Bethany's betrayal would take years to fully heal. I'd probably always be a little guarded, a little suspicious. But I was alive. I was free. And I had a future. That was more than enough. Chapter 9. Full circle 1 year later, I stood in my Boston office, preparing for the biggest presentation of my career. The FBI had hired Walters Security Solutions to develop training materials on digital evidence gathering in domestic conspiracy cases. My experience with Bethany's case had become the foundation for new protocols. You ready? Vernon Hancock asked. The former FBI agent had joined my company as head of investigations, bringing decades of experience to the team. I think so. It's surreal. Turning the worst experience of my life into something that might help others. That's how we heal, Vernon said. We take the pain and transform it into something meaningful. The presentation went well. I walked the FBI team through every step of my investigation, from the moment Lee identified the fake ultrasound to the final arrests. I showed them the digital forensics techniques I'd used, the evidence-gathering protocols, the coordination with law enforcement. When I finished, the lead agent, a woman named Candy McKinney, stood and applauded. "Mr. Walters, this is exactly what we need. We're seeing an increase in domestic conspiracy cases involving insurance fraud. Your protocols could save lives." After the meeting, I checked my phone. A text from Roxanne. "How did the presentation go?" "Great. Want to celebrate tonight?" "Always. Your place or mine?" "Mine. I'll cook." Over the past year, my relationship with Roxanne had developed slowly, carefully. We'd both been burned before. Both carried scars. But we'd built something real, a partnership based on honesty, trust, and genuine affection. Last month, Roxanne had met my colleagues and impressed everyone with her quick wit and intelligence. She'd met Lee dozens of times, the two women forming a close friendship. And yesterday, Roxanne had asked me to meet her teenage daughter from her previous marriage. It felt like progress, like healing. That evening, as I prepared dinner in my apartment, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Walters. This is Officer Frank Stevenson from Phoenix PD. I'm calling about Bethany Walters." My stomach dropped. "What about her?" "There's been an incident. She was attacked in prison yesterday by another inmate. She's in critical condition." I set down my knife, processing this. Is she going to survive? Too early to tell. The inmate who attacked her was apparently one of Dean Mann's previous victims' relatives. Somehow got herself arrested and placed in the same facility. Officer Stevenson paused. "I wanted to give you a heads up in case the media contacts you. Thank you for letting me know." After hanging up, I stood in my kitchen feeling nothing. Not satisfaction, not sadness, not anger, just emptiness. Bethany had tried to kill me. She'd plotted my death methodically, coldly. She deserved her prison sentence. But this, being attacked, possibly dying in a prison hospital. I thought about it for a long moment, then realized I didn't care. Not in a vengeful way, but in a truly indifferent way. Bethany was part of my past. A chapter that had closed. Whether she lived or died no longer affected me. I'd moved on. When Roxanne arrived an hour later, I told her about the call. "How do you feel?" she asked, studying my face. "I don't. I feel nothing." I shrugged. "Is that wrong?" "No," Roxanne took my hand. "It means you've healed. You're not defined by what she did to you anymore. You're defined by what you did next, how you fought back, how you rebuilt, how you turned trauma into triumph." Over dinner, we talked about the future. Roxanne's daughter was applying to colleges. My company was considering expansion to a third city. We discussed maybe taking a vacation together, maybe making our relationship more official. "I'm thinking about buying a house," I said. "Something with a yard, maybe room for a dog." "That sounds nice." Roxanne smiled. "Any particular neighborhood?" "I was thinking something near the harbor. Close enough that I can see the office, but far enough for privacy." I paused. "Maybe with enough space for a girlfriend who visits frequently." Roxanne's smile widened. "A girlfriend, huh? Anyone in particular?" "I know a cardiac surgeon who might be interested." "I think she'd be very interested." Roxanne leaned across the table and kissed me. "In fact, I think she's falling in love with you." "The feeling's mutual," I said softly. Later that night, after Roxanne went home, I stood on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. I thought about everything I'd been through. The betrayal, the fight, the victory, the recovery. 2 years ago, my life had fallen apart. But in the rebuilding, I'd become stronger, smarter, more aware. I'd learned to trust my instincts, to value honesty, to fight for myself. Bethany had tried to destroy me. Instead, she'd forged me into someone better. My phone buzzed. A text from Lee. "Heard about Bethany. You okay, Harvey?" "I'm great. Better than great." "I'm happy, Lee." "Good. That's the best revenge." "Living well." I smiled. My sister was right. I'd won not just by sending Bethany to prison, but by refusing to let her actions define me. I'd rebuilt my life, found love again, turned trauma into purpose. I was happy, genuinely, deeply happy. And that was the ultimate victory. 3 months later, I received a letter from the prison. Bethany had survived the attack, but was permanently disabled. She'd be spending the rest of her life in a wheelchair in a prison medical facility. I read the letter once, then threw it away. I had better things to think about, like the ring I bought last week, sitting in my desk drawer, waiting for the right moment to give to Roxanne. Like the new contract with Homeland Security, using my protocols to train agents nationwide. Like the house I was closing on next month for bedrooms, a yard, ocean views. Bethany Walters was a ghost, a memory that grew fainter with each passing day. Harvey Walters was alive, thriving, and building a future worth living. The trap had sprung perfectly. Justice had been served. And Harvey had won in every way that mattered. As I walked into my office that morning, Vernon greeted me with a smile. Morning, boss. Big day. The DOJ called. They want to discuss expanding the program to international cases. Let's do it. I settled into my chair, feeling the satisfaction of meaningful work. Let's make sure no one else has to go through what I did. That's the spirit. Vernon paused at the door. You know, when I first met you, you were a victim planning revenge. Now you're a survivor helping others. That's real growth. After Vernon left, I opened my laptop and began working. But first, I pulled up a photo on my phone. Roxanne, laughing at something I'd said, her eyes bright with joy. I'd faced evil and won. I'd been betrayed and survived. I'd lost everything and rebuilt better. The story that had started with a fake ultrasound and a sister's desperate warning had ended with justice, healing, and hope. And as I began my work, helping train agents to catch predators like Bethany before they could destroy more lives, I knew with absolute certainty I'd not only survived, I'd triumphed. And that triumph tasted sweeter than any revenge ever could.